Hello there, my name is Ink, and I welcome you to the campfire, where I will tell story after story of my favorite reads. So, get comfortable, sit back and relax, while we start off with something that just might tickle your taste buds. This story is called Cook-Off. Oh, so tenderly, I brushed the carefully seasoned glaze over the succulent thigh until it shimmered under the stage lights, just the right amount. Too much and it overwhelms the meat, and that was the last thing I wanted to happen. I glanced up at the judges, who were walking around with their clipboards wearing expressionless faces, checking boxes the rest of us couldn't see. As I placed the meat into the oven, I wiped the sweat from my brow and chanced a look at my competition. Mrs. June was scrambling now, looking full-on panicked as she wiped her hands desperately on her apron. My heart went out to her. She couldn't handle the stress. Her family was in the audience cheering her on, but they too looked rather worried. One of her children was crying. Then there was Mr. Alverson, who had bitten into his lip hard enough to create a dribble of blood down his chin while concentrating on the slab of meat before him. I suddenly became wary of the fact that I'd already gotten mine in the oven, while they were both still perfecting theirs. An alarm went off, and the head judges ordered everyone to place their dishes in the oven as they were. Mrs. June began to cry and Mr. Alverson swore aloud. I felt a small sense of relief. We waited, the minutes tickling on seemingly endlessly. Finally, mine was done. I pulled it out, making a few last-minute adjustments, adding some olive oil and bay leaves. With a shaky breath, I walked my tray up to the judges' table, the floor crinkling under my feet as I went. Eventually, the others did too. We stood there, 3 in a row, all of us holding our breath as the judges began to cut off pieces from each of our meals and taste them, whispering amongst themselves and marking on their clipboards some more. Finally, the head judge stood up, addressing everyone in the room.
A decision has been made amongst the 3 finalists. The winners this round are Mr. Alverson.
I jumped as Mr. Alverson whooped in excitement.
Mr. Farrell.
I sighed in relief. Mrs. June screamed. She began to beg and plead. One of her children got past the guards and ran up to her, gripping onto her, but it was no use. Several butchers rushed forward, tossing the child aside and grabbing Mrs. June. One slit her neck all the way across, another attached a hook to her ankles and hoisted her upside down, her blood draining onto the plastic that lined the floor. I took several deep breaths to steady myself as I waited for new instructions. The main judge smiled.
Gentlemen, our final dish will be a kidney stew.
I shivered as the butchers hacked and chopped, finally bringing Mr. Alverson and myself Mrs. June's kidneys. I returned to my post to create the most important meal of my life. seeing red. The first day of school. Everyone loves the first day of school, right? New year, new classes, new friends. It's a day full of potential and hope before all the dreary depressions of reality show up to ruin all the fun. I like the first day of school for a different reason though. You see, I have a sort of power. When I look at people, I can sense a sort of aura around them. A colored outline based on how long that person has to live. Most everyone I meet around my age is surrounded by a solid green hue, which means they have plenty of time left. A fair amount of them have yellow-orange-ish tinge to their auras, which tends to mean a car crash or some other tragedy. Anything that takes people before their time, as they say. The real fun is when the auras venture into the red end of the spectrum though. Every now and again, I'll see someone who's basically a walking stoplight. Those are the ones who get murdered or kill themselves. It's such a rush to see them and know their time is numbered. With that in mind, I always get to class very early so I can scout out my classmates' fates. The first kid who walked in was basically radiating red. I chuckled to myself. Too damn bad, bro. But as people kept walking in, they all had the same intense glow. I finally caught a glimpse of my rose-tinted reflection in the window, but I was too stunned to move. Our professor stepped in and locked the door. His aura a sickening shade of green. Now that I'd taken you to school, why not I take you somewhere where you'd probably encounter someone like this in your workplace? This story is called I'm the Kind of Co-Worker Everyone Hates. I'm the kind of co-worker everyone hates. I'm the co-worker that steals from the fridge. I know it's rude and selfish, but everyone else's things just taste so much better than my bag lunches. Plus, I have to admit, it's pretty funny at how upset my colleagues get when they notice things missing. They yell, "For Christ's sake, it was labeled," and
What kind of monster would do this?
it got to be such a huge ordeal that the office set out a witch hunt for the culprit. The longtime janitor was fired and blamed for throwing things out. I stopped stealing for a while and things went back to normal. But I couldn't help peeking in the fridge and seeing all those treats staring me down. The temptation was too much and I grabbed the container belonging to the new girl, Tracy Mayers. As I chowed down, one of my co-workers walked in on me, caught me red-handed with Tracy's Tupperware. Instead of calling me out or making a scene, he just left the room without a word. I suppose he knew that no one would believe him. I finished eating right as my pager went off, so I methodically washed my hands and straightened my tie before heading back to the operating room. My newest patient, Tracy, was prepped for me to perform her heart transplant. The only problem was that someone had stolen it from the fridge. Shh. Who knows, you, or even me, might end up in here one day. The last story, but possibly not the least. This story is called Hell. There was no pearly gate. The only reason I knew I was in a cave was because I had just passed the entrance. The rock wall rose behind me with no ceiling in sight. I knew this was it. This was what religion talked about, what man feared. I had just entered the gate to hell. I felt the presence of the cave as if it was a living, breathing creature. The stench of rotten flesh overwhelmed me. Then there was the voice. It came from inside and all around.
Welcome.
Who are you? I asked, trying to keep my composure.
You know.
The thing answered. I did know. You are the devil. I stuttered, quickly losing my composure. Why me? I've lived as good as I could. The silence took over the space as my words died out. It seemed like an hour went by before the response came.
What did you expect?
The voice was penetrating but patient. I don't know. I never believed any of this. I uttered. Is that why I'm here? Silence. I continued. They say that the greatest trick you ever pulled was convincing the world you don't exist.
No, the greatest trick I've ever pulled was convincing the world that there is an alternative.
There is no God? I shivered. The cave trembled with the words.
I am God.